Hi guys, for my biblical leader, who I wanted to use as a model for my ministry, um, I think Daniel was one of the prime examples for me, especially because I'm in a weird spot with ministry as I'm a cop, so I have a lot of ministry in the secular realm as well as really heavily involved with the youth at my church. So I thought Daniel was a great kind of role model to kind of follow after because of his impact with King Nebuchadnezzar in the Babylonian captivity. Just because it's kind of the secular realm, and then kind of just seeing how he was just in his ministry relationship um, with his fellow Israelites. Just kind of helps kind of go through there. But I always thought Daniel was a great guy. I always loved to see kind of how we were able to see him at a young age and how he would mature into this great leader. And I think he's a great person to model after. So it's kind of my background on why I chose that, specifically in the context of my ministry, just on how to be a leader. And while you're not, cause I'm not like a huge leader, and I'm not on staff with my church on that. But where that doesn't really necessarily mean I should just just be a volunteer on that end, but I should just strive to be um, to glorify God by just working diligently and working um, faithfully, as we'll kind of see in Daniel's life, as well as my secular job. That the work that you do in the secular realm should be a testament to what God's done in your life, and what God can do for others, as we see with Nebuchadnezzar as he goes from killing people, threatening to kill those who worship God, into saying everybody needs to worship God. So, to start off, I just thought Daniel had just this incredible resolve and integrity, um, and I thought that was one of the strongest points. Just to kind of, as biblical leaders, they need to have just to resolve in integrity. That those two are kind of just as one piece. That um, a good leader is resolute. That he or she is able to just hold firm and be steadfast in his or her beliefs, because that's what it is. And in the context of that is the beliefs in faith, the integrity that God calls us to be, God calls us to have. That's what Daniel had, and it's easy to see the roots of it when he was first captive, first captured, and he was recruited as along with the other young, pretty much good-looking, smart, wise men, or young men of the time, when they were just challenged by the Babylonians to eat, sleep, breathe, the culture, be challenged daily, have to look a certain way, have to kind of plump up. And Daniel, um, while he wasn't going to not work hard, because that's who God called him to be, was to glorify Him in His work and everything that He does. But what did cross the line with that, just that strong integrity that he had, was eating food offered to idols. And while could be kind of just looking at the context, this could be a lot of meats unprepared, and the way that the Israelites would normally eat it. Just kind of this mixture of unkosher meals. While that might have been the recipe for really kind of bulking up the youth, Daniel his and his three amigos, um, they had a problem with that, and they actually took a stand on it. And what's interesting about Daniel is um, he didn't just stop there. You can kind of see the problem solving skills already start to develop when he was young, which I like to parallel with my youth, the guys that I talk with, that it's what we do when we're young and in the early stages that actually lay the foundation for when it's older and you're facing those same fiery storms. Like, hey, you're gonna get thrown into a furnace. Well, I don't think Daniel will be able to face that certain death if he didn't face the probable death that would happen if he disobeyed and didn't refuse to eat the stuff. So what Daniel did with God's wisdom was that he was very polite, and he's not very polite, but he was very precise and just kind of was able to work his way through it and be like, hey, um, I can't eat this food because it will defile me and it is against what I'm taught is and what I believe. Um, if it's possible, I'd like to just eat vegetables and water. Um, and then I guarantee you that by doing that, we'll be able to outperform. We'll look better. We'll be healthier. We'll be fuller. And by proposing that, and he was kind of just having that challenge on the authority. He was able to go boldly before because he had that faith that God was going to provide. So it was just a little example, and then seeing that God's faithfulness came through. But it was just Daniel really kind of showed me on that a leader needs to have just a resolute spirit, which is in the context of integrity and in faith. So that was my first point with him, and just that was through seeing how he was able to make a stand against. He might have faced death if his if it didn't go through as according to his plan, but he was able to trust in God, and God provided in that. The second principle I want to pull from Daniel's life is his necessity of worship. That I believe that to be a successful leader in ministry and in a secular world, just for the kingdom, then worship needs to be part of your being. Daniel prayed to God 3 times a day. His worship, and it was his ritual, and he made this his ritual by doing it, being diligent in that, and that was what he did. And that's when the time came, that when the clock was ticking, it was an instant, just it was a reflex for him. He was able to go, but okay, it's time to pray. It's time to worship my God, and for especially being, I would just encourage my leaders, my fellow leaders, and encourage those who I'm working with that want to just honor God in the secular job, that worship needs to be consistent, because especially in my job, it's very draining. Like even today, I saw somebody die, and it can be extremely draining on your just on your soul and your spirit. But if you have this consistency of just being able to worship, then that'll make your leading and making the work that you do, um, it just gives you a flow, and it's that constant source of just God. So, and that was seen when Daniel was facing when the king's men kind of wanted to plot against Daniel, and because they didn't like all of his success, because Daniel was a man of worship, he was a man of integrity, a man of resolve, who in turn God blessed his work, and in the secular world he was moving up the chain in Babylon just because of that. So as a result, they were jealous and they wanted, okay, let's get Daniel, let's trip Daniel up. Well, what could they trip him up on? Well, nothing, because he was a man just after God's heart too. And what the only thing they can get him on was, man, this guy prays too much, this guy worships too much. So let's make that illegal. So once they made that illegal, Daniel, again going back to that first principle, need to have that resolve. So no matter what the season, it's going to be, no, this is what I believe and this is what's going to happen. He goes and he's like, okay, it's outlawed, but my reflex is I'm going to worship. I'm going to worship God with what I do, and I'm going to honor Him because He's given me so much. I have to worship Him. It's my only response. And then that faced him with he was sent to the lion's den, but God provided for him. So I would just show that through those two principles that Daniel showed us how a great leader, a great biblical leader, is able to make an impact in ministry and in the secular world, um, through just having resolve and just this fire for bringing God honor, and just having that inner integrity, knowing that everything that you do is going to either bring God glory, or it's just going to shame His name, and that's on you. And then the second thing is that um, worship needs to be the lifeblood of your days, um, and that we need to have that worshipful attitude, that prayerful attitude, and that's where we're able to be consistent in doing God's will. And even when the days are hard, when you don't want to go hang out with your crazy kids because they literally drive you nuts because you just had a long day at work, just in the context of my ministry, or you just had you have to go, you know, go tell a family that a loved one of theirs has died, or having somebody in the back of your car who just seems lost, who's strung out on drugs, and that provides you the opportunity to um, either I can just be quiet in the front and just ignore them and book them into jail, or I could just spread the gospel to them in that. So, by having those two principles, I believe that, as shown in Daniel, that a leader can really be developed and can do mighty works for God. Thank you.